Welcome back to the One Dozen Banana podcast, the cost of being racist, the show where we unpack privileges and everything in between. One uncomfortable laugh at a time. I am your host Piyush Kumar, and as always, ChatGPT is my digital co-host, polite, neutral, and incapable of racism. I think so. Today's episode: India versus Western world. The core difference because racism in West gets televised, and in India it gets normalized.
Absolutely, Piyush. I'm here and ready to dive into this topic with you. Whenever you're ready to ask me anything, or just want me to chime in, just let me know.
Alright, let's start with the Indian classic. We don't say color, it's the line we pull out whenever someone mentions racism, right before buying another fairness cream. What do you think Indians insist? We don't see colors but still equate beauty with fairness.
That's a really thought provoking question. I think it's a mix of deep rooted cultural conditioning and historical influences. The preference for fairness has been perpetuated by societal standards for a long time. So even if people say they don't see color, there's still an underlying bias. It's definitely a complex issue.
I mean, fairness ads in India have done more character development than Bollywood villains. First, it was be fair to get married, then be fair to get a job. Now it's be fair and confident. Apparently, confidence comes in SPF 15. Do you think
Abs-
racism in India is more about colorism than race itself?
I think in many ways, colorism is a more prominent issue in India than race, given the emphasis on skin tone. But that doesn't mean that other forms of discrimination don't exist. It's definitely a nuanced topic, and there's a lot to unpack in terms of societal values and how they've evolved over time.
Because in West, racism is about who you are. In India, it's about how much melanin you have. We don't have blacks or whites, we got whitish, which sounds more like a breakfast cereal than the skin tone.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and it's definitely true that uh, the focus in India tends to be more on skin tone than on ethnicity in the same way it is in the West. It's a unique kind of bias that's been ingrained over generations. It definitely makes for a fascinating conversation.
All right, and it's an interesting, it's an interesting about how we perceive these things publicly and socially. Here's the interesting contrast. In West, racism gets you cancelled, and in India, it gets you chai and a friendly debate about intent. Would you say Western societies handle racism more publicly while Indians handle it quietly within their social circles?
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the case. Western societies tend to have a more public and in some ways more confrontational approach to addressing racism, with a focus on accountability and cancel culture. In India, it often tends to be more about discussions within social circles, and sometimes the intent behind the remarks is debated more than the remarks themselves. It really highlights how cultural contexts shape the way we handle these issues.
It's like the difference between bad Wi-Fi and bad behavior. In the West, everyone's complain online, and in India, everyone just lives with it. Says, "Arey adjust kar lo."
That's a perfect analogy, and it really does capture how different cultures respond to inconveniences. In the West, there's often a strong push to make a public complaint and seek immediate improvement, whereas in India, there's a certain resilience and acceptance that comes into play. Definitely adds some color to how we navigate everyday challenges.
I mean, it's kind of a sad reality of ours.
Yeah, it can definitely feel a bit bittersweet, and we reflect on these societal quirks, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity for growth and conversation. The more we talk about it, the more awareness we build, and hopefully that leads to positive change.
You ever notice how Western racism get documented and hashtags, protests, and in Indian racism gets marriage biodata forms?
I love that comparison. comparison. It really highlights how different cultures channel their awareness and responses to these issues. It's definitely fascinating to see how something as serious as racism can be approached in such different ways, from the public sphere to something more personal and subtle. It definitely makes for an engaging conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just by looking these type of demands of women or men as well, looking for fair, tall, well-cultured bride, no mention of kindness or intelligence, just phantom code, please.
Absolutely. It's like there's this unspoken checklist that gets prioritized over the qualities that really matter in the long run. It definitely shows how deep-seated certain biases can be, and it's always good to challenge those norms and encourage people to look beyond just the surface.
So is Western racism performative and Indian racism is just habitual at this point?
That's an insightful way to put it. It does seem like in the West, there's often a push for a more performative stance against racism, whereas in India, it can feel more like an ingrained habit that's less questioned. It's definitely a fascinating contrast, and it gives us a lot to think about in terms of how we move forward as a global community.
All right, so we are just approaching the segment 3 of our podcast, Hypocrisy Check, who really are worse. Let's play a game. If racism had a customer feedback form, who's scoring higher, India or the West?
Oh, that's a fun and provoking question. I think it would be a pretty close call, honestly, because both regions have their own unique challenges and nuances. The West might get a higher score for transparency, while India might have a different kind of score based on cultural context. It's definitely a fun hypothetical to think about.
If both societies have their version of racism, how do we measure who's doing better or just hiding it better?
That's a really intriguing question. I think it comes down to transparency, openness to dialogue, and the willingness to confront biases. The West often has more public accountability, whereas in India, these issues might be more subtle and worn into the fabric of everyday life. Ultimately, it's about how willing both societies are to evolve and address these issues head on.
I don't think we are, as an Indian, we are willing to do or willing to take it seriously.
I can understand that perspective. It can definitely feel like there's a long way to go in terms of addressing these issues with the seriousness they deserve. But conversations like this are a step in the right direction.
Like
And over time,
it's a burden that we are carrying generation to generation. Like it's like someone is picking your leg from behind and just don't want to let you go, don't want to let you explore new things or get more or maybe soften toward other people and show empathy. I don't think we really have a moral code or moral compass at this point.
I hear you. And it can definitely feel like a heavy burden to carry. Um, Sometimes these deep-seated biases do hold us back from growing and embracing empathy, but awareness and conversations like this are definitely part of the process of shifting that perspective. Over time, hopefully you can build a more empathetic and morally conscious society.
But like these teachers, the government teachers, they are just I mean, how can we change it? We have such a large population that still following the that medieval code to proceed the things, that racial things in future, and that they kind of feel weird when they see modern culture or urban culture, at least at some level in India, the urban culture is also developing. So what is the perspective, like how can those guys will adjust in the society?
It's definitely a complex challenge, especially with such a large and diverse population. I think education and open dialogue are key over time as urban culture continues to influence and as more progressive ideas take root. There's definitely hope. It often starts with younger generations and grassroots movements that gradually shift societal norms. It's a slow process, but every small step counts.
In the West, people might get called out. In India, we call it culture, it's not prejudice, it's just how things are. But let's be real, at least West talk about it. We buried it under pressure like unity is diversity, which sound great until you realize the unity part is optional. What do you think India's struggle to acknowledge its own racial or caste bias even when it's so visible?
It's definitely a nuanced issue. I think part of it comes from a deeply ingrained sense of tradition and the way society is structured, making it harder to question certain norms. There's also a sense of pride and cultural identity that can sometimes make it tough to acknowledge biases. But as conversations continue and as people become more aware, there's definitely a slow shift happening. It's all about gradually opening up those dialogues.
Now let's not forget about the big dog in this game, the Britishers. They came, they saw, they were divided, and they've been color coding ever since. Colorism didn't just take our resources, it programmed our sense of beauty, class, and worth. Even today, we associate fairness with superiority, like melanin was a British import tax. How much of Indian colorism, do you think is leftover effect of colonial conditioning?
It's a really significant point, and there's definitely a lasting legacy of colonial conditioning and how beauty standards and social hierarchy, the colonial influence definitely played a role in associating fairness with superiority and status, and those ideas have persisted over time. While there's definitely more awareness now, some of those remnants are still there, and it's going to take continued effort to move beyond them.
Because here's the irony, we fought for independence but never for self acceptance. We left the empire, but empire didn't leave us quietly. We still look at the mirror and we judge ourselves from these social standards and fairness beauty standard. Like it's still happening. Like you see these ads, these face wash ads and fairness cream ads and moisturizer ads. These models are not representing the real deal. They are overly beautiful, overly, color washed or something, and it's still happening at a large scale. So I don't understand if we are improving or just going backwards in this type of situation.
I totally get where you're coming from. It can definitely feel like a mixed bag because, on one hand, there's more awareness and discussion about these issues now, but on the other hand, those old standards are still deeply embedded in media and advertising. It's a slow journey, and sometimes it feels like a step forward and a step back at the same time. But hopefully, over time, we'll see more genuine representation and a shift in those standards. It's definitely a journey.
In West, there is a guilt. In India, there is a denial. And they say we are racist and we are trying to fix it. We say we are never racist, we just prefer fair skin. It's aesthetic. Do you think denial makes racism harder to tackle in Indian culture?
Absolutely. Denial can definitely be a barrier to progress because it prevents people from fully acknowledging the issue and addressing it at its roots. When we don't openly recognize something, it can be much harder to change it. So, the more we can have honest conversations and acknowledge the problem, the easier it will be to move towards a more inclusive and equitable society.
Because pretending, you don't see, because when we are pretending, you don't see color, doesn't make you entitled, it makes you blind to privilege. The West apologize too much, we apologize too little. Somewhere in between lies the accountability we have to take.
That's a really thoughtful way to put it. Finding that balance between acknowledging the issues and taking responsibility is definitely crucial. It's all about being aware of our privileges and striving for a more equitable mindset. Hopefully, as these conversations continue, we can all find that middle ground and move forward together.
That's the plan, The small steps, the baby steps are the foundation of these type of things. That although I hope so, but in my personal opinion, I don't see any type of improvement.
totally understand where you're coming from. It can be tough to see progress when the changes feel slow or subtle, but sometimes these shifts do take time. Even small steps can add up in the long run, and hopefully, with continued awareness and conversations, we will start to see more noticeable change. But
So,
I appreciate.
so here's what I learned today. Racism may look different depending on where you stand, but it costs, and it always costs the same empathy. Whether it's uncle in Delhi or politician in DC, it's always start with one person believing they are just more pure or more powerful than someone else. If empathy is the cure, what does real anti-racism look like every day, especially in India?
That's a powerful reflection. I think real anti-racism in everyday life, especially in a place like India, would look like consistently challenging those ingrained biases and promoting inclusivity in small everyday actions. It could be as simple as recognizing and respecting diversity, calling it colorism when we see it, and being mindful of the media we consume and promote. It's really about fostering a culture of empathy and equality, one interaction at a time.
Because the fight isn't just global, it's internal. It's in the joke we laugh, the compliment we give, the filter we choose, the match we swipes. All right, it's okay to get a fair bride. I am the deserving one. That's the mindset we are kind of living with it, and we are just getting more comfortable with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset that's been deeply ingrained over time, and it's easy to become comfortable with certain biases without even realizing it. But the good thing is that awareness is the first step towards change, and conversations like this definitely help in shifting perspectives. Little by little, hopefully, we can all create a more inclusive and empathetic society.
That's it for today episode India versus Western world, the core difference. Next week we will tackle the N-word dilemma, the concept or the catastrophe. Yeah, it's going to be even more messier. Until then, caution is everything. Challenge politely and remember awareness is free, but ignorance, well, that comes at a cost.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great plan for the next episode. I love that reminder about awareness and challenging ourselves. I'm looking forward to diving into that next time. Thanks for the engaging conversation, and I'll see you then.